Hi and welcome to my unit on belonging, and in this unit we will take around about 8 to 12 weeks to unpack the concept of belonging. In this unit I want to explore the cortex, being the French lieutenant's woman, as well as two other companion texts, being a film review, to go along with this theme so that we might be able to unpack it together. We might be able to analyse a lot of the themes, a lot of the understandings and a lot of the misunderstandings. So join with me as I just guide you through a unit plan that I have put together to further unpack and explore the concept of belonging. Okay, so what I would do in week 1 is I would begin to define belonging. So belonging is the idea of being part of something where you are accepted. Belonging is to be and to feel included and accepted within a social, religious, political, cultural and economic group. Belonging is the feeling of security and support when there is a sense of acceptance, inclusion and identity to a member trying to fit into a certain group, place, etc. So in week 1, we'll begin defining these things, we'll begin to unpack it, to explore some of those definitions, how do they fit with the students' own experiences, as well as I'll get the students in their own reflective books or on their laptops to define their own belonging definition of belonging. So that'll take us into week 1. So week 2, then I want to start really unpacking it, really drilling down. So in week 2, I want to have a brainstorming session on belonging. So what I would do with the students is I would break the class into groups of 3, and using great big sheets of butcher's paper on the floor, have them work in groups and collaborate together and brainstorm their concepts of belonging. And I'd love them to form a beautiful mural to put on the wall as a centre point to the unit on belonging that will be taught over the next 6 to 8 weeks. So this unit would probably be for year 11 to 10, year 10 to 11 students. So the expertise on the murals would be a lot higher than it would be if it was year 7 to 8, obviously. So I'm looking for some really interesting things to go up on the wall, and that will just really set the scene and set the tone of the journey that we're on as a class with belonging. So that's week 2. So going into week 3 to 5, over a 2-week block of lessons, I want to dissect 2 different media interpretations of belonging as a lead into eventually unpacking our prescribed text, being the French lieutenant's woman. So this will take the form of a film analysis. And I've chosen Looking for Ali Brandy and I've chosen Witness as our 2 movies that the class will view and examine and then begin to unpack all the various themes of belonging and how they impact the characters and why. And these 2 films are both recommended texts by the Board of Studies. Ali Brandy is a fabulous Australian film, which for most of us we do know. But the great thing about Ali Brandy is it's looking at the belonging concepts of being in a culturally different environment in an Australian culture. It also looks at the themes and concepts of belonging where Ali has a single mum. She doesn't know her father. So that whole concept of her family dynamics and how she belongs in that. And then moving to the extreme opposite of Witness with Harrison Ford. I would love to just really have that as our next companion text, being such a different theme on belonging as well. It bases itself in an Amish community, how you belong in that, and then what it looks like to not belong in that, to be tempted to move out of those confines, and how does that feel? How do we then feel when we don't belong to something anymore? So that's why I've selected those 2 films to dissect. So that'll be great time with the students, and as they're watching those films they'll be taking notes in their reflective diaries to work along towards the end of this unit, where they will have an essay to write. So note taking will be necessary. So that takes us to week 6. So there's just a shot of Looking for Ali Brandy, and you can see already in that shot the dynamics from the grandmother to the mother right down to Ali. Okay, and there's Witness by Peter Weir, which is a fabulous film. So, week 6 to 7, after we have watched the 2 films, I'll have the students examine the different types of belonging, as I've discussed, found firstly in Looking for Ali Brandy, then in Witness. I want to examine and discuss 2 specific aspects of family belonging and cultural belonging. Questions that I would ask them, that I would pose, is why is it so important to fit in? How are we affected when we don't fit in? Why do you think belonging is an integral need for all human beings? How does belonging to a particular cultural group affect a person? And how does it affect them when they step outside of that cultural arena? What I'd like to do in this time, in week 6 to 7, when I'm posing these questions and really drilling down deep for some interesting answers, some higher order thinking here, being as year 10 to 11, I would like to invite a guest speaker in to one of my classes who is from a cultural background that's a very deep-seated, strong influence in their life. And I have a friend from a Greek family in Newcastle. So I would like to invite them in and for them to share what it means to belong to that group and what it means when they step outside of that group and they want their own identity in a group that isn't Greek influenced. So I think a personal testimony from someone will be very impactful and powerful for the students. So that's week 6 to 7. And then we began John Fowles' The French Lieutenant's Woman. So here we go on our core text, which is very exciting, and I'm just hoping that I've laid a platform for the students as they move then to the core text, so that the theme and the concept and the diversity of belonging that we've already studied in the 2 film studies has really laid that for the students. So here we go. So week 8, I want to introduce The French Lieutenant's Woman as the primary text to the class. So I want to begin an overview on the background of the text in this week. So as we know, it's based in 19th century Victorian England, and I want to really just do a basically crossover into a history study for one of these sessions in week 8, where I just lay some foundation of what it was like in those times, what it was like for a woman living in those times. Was there equality of the sexes in those times? How did it feel if you weren't a member of proper society in those times? So I want to lay some historical foundation. Then, during week 8, in one of our next sessions, I would book a library room where it's nice and cozy for the students and take them in there, get them all settled, and I want to do a close passage read with them. And I'm hoping that I'd be able to get through a chapter and really lay a foundation as to this story, and I would read that aloud to them. And that, I hope, would just really begin their passion and excitement to read the rest of the book. So then I would like the students to take about a week to a week and a half to read that book. And, you know, hopefully we can have that book done, nailed. And, whoops, had a little... There we go. And so we can have that book all read and off we go. And so during that time that they are reading it, we will still be drilling down closely on our concepts and our themes. And I'll also be making time within class to keep reading that and to jot notes as they go. I think that's a great way to analyse a novel. Okay, so week 9, after the allotted time that they have had to read this text, I want to begin really unpacking it in terms of the area of study, which is belonging. So I want to begin a brainstorming class on what themes, thoughts, dialogues they found in the text that would have indicated to them the concept of belonging or not belonging. This could be done in small groups, as I love to work in small groups. I just find it such a beneficial and amazing time of collaboration. Or as a large brainstorming discussion whereby me as the teacher would facilitate the students and all of them would be heard, and I would just set up a series of dot points on the whiteboard, and those dot points could be then written into their reflective diaries, forming a component of note taking that the students have been doing over this unit. So this is going to be a great time because as this story is very different to the 2 film reviews that we had done, it is in 19th century England, it'll be very exciting to help the students to understand some of the truths that they might have seen within The French Lieutenant's Woman, some of the misconceptions, and we can really and I will really guide that as the teacher, as a facilitator, along the lines of the concept of belonging. So that's week 9. Week 10. In this lesson, I want to keep analysing quite strongly, and this time I want to start a character analysis of Sarah Woodruff, and I want to discuss how the text describes or perceives her and how her place in that community, in that society in the mid-19th century in Victorian England, has shaped her character? How does that fit for her character? How is she constrained by those things? So there's some of the things I want to start beginning. So have the students again in groups. I'd like them to draw up 2 charts. One with how Sarah Woodruff would have been judged and perceived in that 19th century Victorian era. And the second chart, I want to draw up a list of how Sarah Woodruff would have been judged and perceived in the 21st century, in modern era. In doing this, it's drawing such a strong comparison to how belonging was perceived years ago, in back in Victorian times, in older times, to how belonging would be perceived in modern day times, when we are educated so much more. We are taught about inclusivity so much more as children, and I just want to see where the students go with that, if they can draw some comparisons, if they can draw some great strengths from that, to see how times have changed and people's needs now are being made paramount in society, and people have the right to have belonging as part of their human rights in the global world that we do live in. Okay, so that's week 10. Week 11. After the students have worked on their charts, I want to take the next lesson to unpack all their findings. Again, hang them all up on the walls of the classroom and begin a brainstorming activity locating the themes that were or were not a concept of belonging in the 19th century, and compare them, as I have said, to the concepts of belonging in the 21st century. So this is a really exciting activity, and I think the students will learn a lot from it. And I think just the fact that they get to share, they get to speak, they get to brainstorm their ideas with their other fellow members and chew that out and just compare what each other has come up with is a great learning tool. So I want to develop a journey, basically, of how belonging has evolved and become a much needed part of human development in the modern world we live, by addressing and discussing the findings of the charts. So week 11, week 12, our last week, as I've said, this could give or take a week, which I would then have the next unit to start working on anyway, if we did finish this unit faster than anticipated. But week 12, so after taking time unpacking the 2 films as comparison texts in conjunction with the core text, I want to do a comparison chart on the board to ascertain any related themes overall that we've learnt in this unit, any undercurrents, any examples of all the 3 texts with belonging as our core component that we've been looking at and researching. So I want to have the students then, finally, at the end of this unit, work on a 2,000-word essay to solidify their findings and their understandings of the concept of belonging. And I want them to use the 3 very differing texts that we've explored in this unit. So they have worked on their reflective diaries, as we know. They've worked on their reflective diaries. They've put any findings in them as we've travelled through this unit. So they have that as a resource to begin working on their 2,000-word essay. So that is basically my 12-week unit plan. What has happened here? That is basically my 12-week unit plan, as you can see, and I think it looks interesting. I think if I was a student it would be interesting. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming on the journey with me for that, and I hope that it looks like a unit plan that you yourself might want to use, but I'd love to know your feedback. So thank you so much. So that's belonging, using the French Lieutenant's Woman as our core text. Thank you.